The next card that we're going to make is going to be a moon in a night sky, and it's going to say, I love you to the moon and back. You're going to want something small to do a circle right here in the middle. I'm just going to draw a little circle, but you might want to trace something like a small little cup or a lid from a bottle. My circle isn't perfect, but that's okay. All right, so this is gonna be my moon, and then I'm gonna have a night sky around it. So up here and down here is where I'm going to write the words, I love you to the moon and back, on the top and the bottom. So let's do the words first. Right up here, it's gonna say, I love you. So capital I, or if you wanna do in cursive, you can. I love, L-O-V-E, you, Y-O-U. And then down here, we're gonna say to the moon and back. So T-O, to the moon, and then and back, A-N-D. With a little exclamation point. All right, now we're going to paint this picture. And we're gonna do this a lot like we did the galaxy that we did last week. So I'm gonna start with a little bit of a bigger brush, and I am just going to brush some water around the edges of this moon. Just a regular shape. It doesn't have to be all perfect. Okay, and then I'm going to want to put some dark colors on here in the water. I'm gonna paint all the way up to the moon, and look, you can turn your paper if it makes it easier for you. If you don't have a brush this fat and this wide, that's totally okay. It just goes faster when you have a bigger brush. Remember, I always say big brushes in big areas, little brushes in little areas. But you can do all of your paintings with one brush if you need to. Okay, I like the way this looks, and it doesn't have it on this side, so I'm gonna do a little bit more of that, just kind of a sharp edges there. Okay, I'm happy with that. While it's still a little bit wet, I'm gonna put some dark red around the edges. I'm just gonna tap those into some places. And again, my paper is tilted. That's why I'm getting this line. If you get that also, then you can just tilt your paper and it will run the other way. I'm gonna put a little more dark blue around this area. Get up right up next to the moon. So the moon is kind of gray or yellow. There's different colors you could paint your sky, and different colors you could paint your moon. I just happened to decide to do this in the dark blue and with some pink and purple. All right, I think I'm pretty happy with that. All right, I'm gonna let that dry for just a minute. I don't want my moon to spread into my night sky. I'll be right back. All right, I went and blow dried this, which is a good trick. If you aren't patient and you don't want to wait for it to dry, you could blow dry it in about a minute. And I could go back at this point and do it even darker, but I think I'm happy with the way it looks. because I do want to sprinkle a little bit of white paint on there, and I want to make sure that that would show up. I am going to sprinkle my white paint now before I paint the moon. So I'm going to load up my brush with some watercolor. It's just white watercolor, and I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit on there to make it look like stars. Okay, and then where it's gotten on the paper here, I'm just gonna rub it off. I wanna remind you that you can do this with crayons. If you use markers, you won't be able to get the white sprinkled on there, but if you did use crayons, then you can just color, you know, the area around the moon. You don't have to use paint. I just happen to like watercolors because I like the way they look, and they go on fast, and they dry really pretty. All right, so now we're ready to do the moon. I'm going to just paint water on the moon really carefully around the edges. And you're just gonna try to paint your whole moon with water. Not a lot, I'm just putting a little water on there just to get the paper damp, because then the paint moves around really nicely. All right, so if you are ready to paint your moon, you have a couple of choices. You could make your moon gray. You could do it in different colors of yellow. Although if you use too bright of a yellow, it really is gonna look more like a sun. So you kind of want to do it a little bit more of a subdued shade, maybe like with some tans in it or something. I think I'm gonna do my moon with some gray. So since the water is a little bit wet, I'm just gonna drip. I mean, the paper is a little bit wet. Not the water is always wet, isn't it? I'm just gonna barely I'm just putting the tiniest bit of color on my brush, and I'm just going to pat it on there in little dots. The moon isn't a solid color, and I just want it to look kind of gray. I think I'm also going to put the tiniest bit of a dark blue, the same color I put in the sky. I think I'm gonna put a little bit of that just in a little bit of an area over here, and maybe around over here as well. Just little drips. So if the if the paint isn't moving, then I'm just gonna use a wet brush that doesn't have any paint on it, and I'm just gonna put a little bit of water back on there. You can see what happens when you put the water in. It disperses, it moves the paint around and makes it look more blotchy, which is kind of nice. You do have to be careful when you get a big, if your paper is tilted like mine, you've got to get a big puddle. So I'm going to soak up some of that with my dry brush. I'm just drying that off on paper every time and soaking it up a little bit. You just pat it, it takes off the paint. All right, I think I want to put just a little bit darker color, on there, a little bit there, and a little bit there. I'm gonna wait a minute and see what happens to that. I think I want to move that around a little. So you just want it to have, it basically has three colors. It has a little bit of blue, it has some white in places still, and it has this gray, because I used so much water with my black paint that it really turned out more gray than black. And I'm gonna just go around, and I'm gonna very carefully paint all the way up to the edges so that I don't have white paper left around those edges. I'm gonna put the tiniest bit more blue in there, and I think I'm done with that. So you can, after this dries, then you'll be able to open this up and you can write a message here. And once again, if you're writing Happy Mother's Day, I'll write that for you again so you can see how it's spelled. So H, I'm gonna do lowercase a, P, P, Mother with the M, capital M-O-T-H-E-R apostrophe S, and then day, D-A-Y. And I love you is spelled I love you, Mom. And then you would sign your name right here. And you could do other pictures in here if you wanted to, like maybe flowers or something. That is our I love you to the moon and back card.